So Faraway Lucas, how are you coping with that weather?
I made the mistake of like being a ginger person and walking outside without sun cream and just forgot.
You fool. You foolish fool.
I'm dying.
I made the mistake of being British.
Oh.
And having long hair in the west. So yeah, Britain's currently melting. To all the Americans who feel tempted to well, it's not that hot. Remember, our country's infrastructure in regards to dealing with heat sucks. Our roads melt and we run out of wind.
Well, you're certainly doing your job today, Mr. Sun. Oh, rats.
Also, just, we have people as pale as me who literally, I've got little blisters from being out in the sun for 2 hours.
I'm this pale. Look at that. That's not even. I ain't got a farmer's tan. It's ridiculous. But yes, today we're talking about a character from one of my favourite movie series, and that character is Robert McCall, aka the Equalizer. So Faraway Lucas, how familiar are you with either the character of Robert McCall or the Equalizer franchise?
I've heard good things about Equalizer, and it's just a movie I've never got around to watching.
So that means if you've not seen the movie, that means you've definitely not seen the TV show it was based on.
I did not know it was based on a TV show.
It's based on a TV show from the 1970s. There's also a TV show version of the film that stars Queen Latifah. And Queen Latifah does her own stunts, and it looks real bad.
They didn't tell you about all the asbestos in here?
Look, lady.
Look, we got a 5 o'clock appointment right here. I can show you.
Shut up, don't talk, just listen. You can't live with the heights we hit it. That girl there, she a catch, no fishing. And if you take a bait, you will learn your lesson.
Oh, man. I mean, what was the recent movie based on, the stuntman? Was it Fall Guy?
Yeah, I thought you were going to say, the Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
Oh, no, way more recent. The one that literally just, flopped. But it was oh, man, that movie bombed, and it was, known IP from, a previous TV show. I was was it?
Yeah.
It's yeah, apparently it's just, a now relatively obscure TV show from, the 70s or 80s or something.
Well, that's what The Equalizer was. If anyone unfamiliar with the premise of The Equalizer, the show, the film, or the show, it largely follows the story of Robert or Roberta McCall in the Queen Latifah TV show version, a retired badass from some shady, nebulous government agency. And it's a very tired and well-worn trope at this point, but there's just something about the retired badass who just has to be I want to get out, but they keep dragging me back in. Like the John Wick.
People keep asking if I'm back, and I haven't really had an answer. But now, yeah, I'm thinking I'm back.
The Brian Mills from the Taken franchise, the Jason Bourne. So do you have any favourite characters in that vein, folks at home? Let us know in the comments your favourite retired badass from fiction.
Well, I mean, I was just gonna first make the joke, is it Danny Glover that's oh, I'm too old for this shit, and he's just constantly trying to get out in the... Yeah, I just thought, that's the first thing that popped to mind. But in terms of favourite, maybe it's old Bruce Wayne from, Batman Beyond.
Ooh, that's a good one.
Good to see you, Bruce. It's been a while. You seem to be holding up pretty well. I could use some of that Kryptonian DNA. You'll outlive us all, Bruce. You're too stubborn to die.
And that's just the epitome of the quote I guarantee someone's going to put in the comment section below, thinking they're being poignant, which is, fear the old man in a profession where men die young.
Yeah, 100%, right? It's any type of hitman or assassin or bodyguard that reaches retirement age, holy shit.
Yeah, especially in fiction, where they're a bodyguard in real life, no doubt, probably has a very stressful job where they deal with a lot of shit. It's not like a bodyguard in fiction where they're diving in front of bullets left, right, and centre. They're not like Homer Simpson to protect the watermelon every other day.
Okay, listen up. My goal is to assassinate that watermelon. Your job is to take the bullet. Go! Go, go, go! Pow!
No! That's the thing though, right? In Batman Beyond, when Bruce Wayne's survived 60 years of dealing with fucking supervillains like the Joker and stuff, and he's even when Terry McGinnis rocks up and gets assaulted, Bruce Wayne comes out with his cane and just whoops ass.
Yeah, he can still beat up this like random henchman. He's like, have you any idea how many unnamed henchmen I've beaten up in my lifetime?
Who do you think you're talking to, old man? We're the Jokers!
Sure you are.
And it reminds me of that great bit in Austin Powers where they bring in Michael Caine as Austin Powers' dad. And he's like the super spy from like back in the day. And they send the guy to go shoot him. And he goes, mate, have you any idea how many unnamed henchmen I've beaten up in my time? Look, you've not even got a name tag. Why don't you just lie down? And the henchman just lies down on the floor because he knows he's not going to win.
You know who I am. Have you any idea how many anonymous henchmen I've killed over the years? And look at you, you haven't even got a name tag. You've got no chance.
It's the classic, isn't it, of just when an entire room of henchmen get beat up and that one last guy's like, no, I'm gonna be the guy.
Yeah. And yeah, that's a very, very popular thing in fiction. I always love it when it's done quite well. But let's bring it back to the subject of today's discussion. That is, Robert Bob McCaw is a former gunnery sergeant in the United States Marine Corps Force Reconnaissance and Defense Intelligence Agency, paramilitary operations officer of Defense Clandestine Services. So basically just a bunch of shady wet work and black ops shit.
There was a lot of meaningless words in there, right?
There are a lot of acronyms in there. Basically just retired badass. And what's really funny is that Denzel Washington is now like 20 years older than Danny Glover was in Lethal Weapon when he's saying I'm too old for this.
Gun!
Raj, meet your new partner.
I'm too old for this shit.
Do you like when like Danny Glover's like, I'm too old for this? I think like the actor was like in his 40s when he was making that joke. Denzel Washington is in his 60s making Equalizer action movies.
Because that's the thing is, like, when, for example, I saw Danny Glover in, like, Saw, I was like, oh, he's not that old, and this is, like, mid-2000s, and, like, how young was he when he was saying he's too old for this shit?
He was, like, in his 40s. But then again, Danny Glover's looked 40 for, like, 50 years, so...
Yeah, just one of those people like Patrick Stewart, just, like, got to 50 really fucking young and then just stayed there for the rest of his life.
Basically, yeah. And it mentions here that he was dragged back into doing the things he'd been trying to put behind him when he met a teenage girl named Alina, who's being trafficked by the Russian mafia. He protects those most in need from those who wish to bring destruction to those close to him. He is the protagonist of The Equalizer 2, and The Equalizer 3. So we're specifically talking about the Denzel Washington version, because I'm not too familiar with like the original version from like the 70s, I think, where it's played by a white dude.
Bad day. So hard, man.
You so get out! Get out! Go on, move!
And I've only ever seen clips of like the Queen Latifah TV show version, and they're really bad. Because like Queen Latifah, great actress. She has great presence, much like Denzel. The problem is, I don't think of her as an action star. And I don't think of Denzel as an action star, but he at least does his own stunts. And it's got like, you know, a movie budget behind it. But like the Queen Latifah version has her like obvious bad body double rolling over like a table in slow motion while there's like CGI grenades going off, and it just doesn't look great.
It's kind of almost like the Taken 3 thing that people take the piss out of, isn't it? Of like, how many cuts does it take to show Liam Neeson going over one fence?
Which is a shame, because I think the first Taken movie was really good, and the choreography for the fight scenes was pretty decent. And that was basically the movie that kick-started this genre. Like, the retired badass has always been a trope. Like, you know, we had Rambo and all those Die Hard movies and stuff, but just around the time Taken was released, they thought, well, instead of trying to make action stars into actors, because generally they can't act that well, let's get actors and turn them into action stars.
I told you I would find you.
So Liam Neeson, great actor, let's just make him into an action star. And that first Taken movie does have some pretty decent action, and the choreography is like, it's not the best, it's not like on par with like, you know, martial arts movies or anything like that, but it's tight. It's good, it's visceral, it's quick, it's snappy. And it's believable that Liam Neeson he's whooping ass because he's fighting with the cold clinical efficiency of someone who's been doing that shit for decades.
I think it ages poorly because of the fact that it cribbed a lot of its styling from the Bourne movies, which also aged quite poorly in terms of just the editing style around action of the quick cuts constantly.
It's also as though they made the mistake of the fight scenes. Yeah, Liam Neeson could do those. He couldn't run around. And that's where the mistakes are an old man could probably kick your ass in a fight. Mike Tyson could probably leather 10 balls of shit out of me. And he probably could continue to do so for the next decade. But I could outrun him, because I bet he can't run that fast, because he's old. Mm-hmm. And it reminds me a little bit of Balboa. Are you familiar with Balboa at all? It's
that's one of the Rocky movies where it was the soft reboot kind of thing, right?
No, that was Creed. Balboa is the last Rocky movie where Rocky comes out of retirement for one last fight. And they have this great montage scene where they talk about, look, you've got no stamina. You're old as fuck. You've got arthritis in both your hands. You can't keep up with a younger man in terms of speed. What you can do is just beat him with sheer raw horsepower.
What we'll be calling on is good old-fashioned blunt force trauma. Horsepower. Heavy-duty, cast-iron, pile-driving punches that will have to hurt so much they'll rattle his ancestors. Every time you hit him with his shot, it's got to feel like he tried kissing the express train.
You are built like a brick shithouse. Use that. And they take advantage of the fact that Rocky is older, but he's just the man's built like granite.
Mm-hmm. And you mentioned Mike Tyson. Obviously, people are going to be screaming in the comments about him fighting Logan Paul, which is the exact thing of whether that fight ever goes down or isn't just completely rigged. I got no real insight to that kind of thing, but I know it's happening or meant to be, and it's how does a guy half his age think it's going to be a fair fight?
And it could be in terms of the fact that Mike Tyson still has that raw punching power, but he doesn't have the stamina anymore. And that's my point of these movies, they make the mistake of trying to use all of the action tropes, like the Taken 3 thing where it's Liam Neeson trying to jump over a fence. It's because the guy's 60 years old. You can have him do a fight scene, but when he's getting to try and run, it just looks bad because it's an old man running. And they're two very different things. And what they made the mistake of it's like the John Wick movies, where you'll notice that in a lot of those John Wick movies, John Wick doesn't run. Because Keanu Reeves is 60 years old, and if he run, you better tell it's an old man. He can fight though. He can close quarter stuff. He's still got all that skill.
And you know that he travels fastest rolling downstairs anyway.
Yeah, he moves faster when he gets his ass kicked than he does when he's running. And that's the thing, John Wick doesn't run in any of those movies. He does the injured, I've been shot in the kidney stagger for 90% of the time he's in motion, which is fine. Because he's old, and they play into the fact he's old, but he's still skilled. He can't do the stuff the younger people can do, but his skill is what allows him to continue to succeed. And I think, Liam Neeson in that third Taken movie, they didn't realise that that's what they had to do. They're if he's an action star, we're doing all that parkour shit like James Bond, right? It's no. And arguably they shouldn't, because it just doesn't look great.
No, you've just got to lean into the strengths of the performers that you've got, and clearly with cases like that, they didn't. It's the 50, 60-year-old action stars shouldn't be running around. They should be being more strategic about everything.
Yes, and that's one of the things that I said, that Balboa movie is really good in that regard. They talk about how there's no way you can beat him in a straight up fight. You just got to rely on the fact you're old as fuck and just you're built like a brick shithouse. And it's the same thing like Robert McCall, when he's in his fight scenes. He's fighting much younger men. But these, they're young, they're brash, they're aggressive. They lack the discipline of like, you know, a seasoned Special Forces operative. And one of the cool things that they do, and they know how cool it is, 'cause they do one scene like it in every movie, is where he'll walk into a room and he'll just use, like, he'll go into like Denzel mode. And he'll scan like the fucking Terminator. And he'll look for all of the weapons in the room. And what he'll do is he'll look at his watch and he'll say, okay, 12 seconds. And like, what? And then he'll kill everyone in the room in 12 seconds.
1,000. 2,000.
Oh, okay.
So Joy King, like, Batman will look around the room. He just gets like Zawaldo, and just like the world slows down as he figures out where everything is. He's got that.
It's one of the strengths of the Guy Ritchie Sherlock Holmes movies, where you see him like breaking down what is going to happen in the fight in like that slow-mo style, and then they play it out in real time, and it's like, those movies are like good, not the best, but like those action scenes and those fight scenes where he's figuring out really showcase that well.
You know, it's a very satisfying visual bit of flair to those fight scenes.
Discombobulate. Dazed. Will attempt wild haymaker. Employ elbow block.
And they look really good in The Equalizer, because he just has like just this cold, calculating facade. Like one of the first fight scenes he does in the first movie is where he's just beating up some Russian gangsters. And like big, huge guy comes up to him, he just puts the corkscrew in his hand. And the guy like swings at him and he just knocks his hand out and just punches him in through like the bicep with a corkscrew and just stands still.
Oh.
And just watches him bleed out. Because he knows that, okay, he's going to do a big wide swing, bang. That's it, that's one of his arteries gone, he's dead. And he knows he's dead because he's probably done it like a dozen times before.
It's kind of the opposite trope of like, rather than being the retired badass, like the student trope of it. I love in, especially in earlier My Hero seasons where you see Deku like working out each person's like different strengths and weaknesses and using that in his fights, and they kind of get rid of that later where it's just like, oh, superpowers.
Yeah, I did like the fact that he would study other people's like powers and abilities and then come up with weaknesses that could be exploited, and they they dropped that when they gave him 15 fucking superpowers and made him the least interesting character in the entire show. But you know, speaking of interesting, we have the personality of Robert McCall here. So, a quote: "One day, somebody does something unspeakable to somebody else. Someone you hardly know, and you do something about it because you can." And that's one of the things in the Equalizer TV show on which the film is based. Like, the Equalizer is just a guy you can call. And I think it's just a card that he leaves around when people have been wronged or, just done an injustice in some way. There'll just be a card saying, "Call me, and I'll sort it the fuck out." And he's just call the Equalizer. If you're a problem, I'll sort it the fuck out.
Is he like a mercenary then?
In the original TV show, he's just like a guy. And obviously, because it's made like the 70s, the action scene's not great. But it's like, yeah, okay, like, someone's kidnapped my kid and the police aren't listening to me, I'll sort it out.
Right, so you made it sound like he was almost like a gun for hire kind of there, but like...
Kind of, but in that way of like, you don't need to hire me, because he helps like, the downtrodden, those who can't help themselves.
Yeah.
Those who, been forgotten by society. We mentioned here, Robert McCall is a noble man, focused on fighting injustice and righting wrongs. He hides in plain sight and helps innocent people, and those who cannot help themselves. He has a strong sense of morality as he attempted to buy Elena out of Slavy's control. And that's what he does. He walks in, he says, okay, this girl been abused, I've kind of taken a shine to her. Here's, $10,000. Just stop being a dick. I'm buying her out of her contract because they're making her into a sex slave essentially. And the guy's like, no. He goes, okay then, I'm just going to kill all of you with a credit card. I'm just going to punch all of your hearts out with corkscrews.
Jesus.
And he even
Christ.
says that he just crouches down. And he looks at the guy as he's bleeding out and says, "You're going to bleed out on this floor."
Your heart's beating 3 times at normal rate. That's because you're losing so much blood. About 30 seconds, body's going to shut down.
And she's going to continue living. And you had the choice to not do this. You're going to die over $9,700. And he just watches him die. And it's the coldest shit. Because obviously it's Denzel, and you're like, oh god. And that's what makes him so threatening.
6, 1,000, 27.
I'm thinking of like the British equivalent where he's just banging down 10 Downing Street. Like, here's like what you get for people in food banks and shit like this.
Well, we does do that. He takes out some corrupt cops as well. Like with some corrupt cops that he takes out. And one of the things that he's makes the films so good is that Denzel, he always gives them a chance. He always gives them a chance to do the right thing. Obviously, they never do because they're a criminal, and criminals and arseholes always double down, which just means the beatdown is all the more satisfying when it occurs.
I mean, how boring a movie would that make, right? If every time you just, like, ask people, do you want to stop being bad? Oh, yeah, okay.
Yeah. Well, to be fair, they probably should after what he does. If they knew who he was, they probably would. And that reminds me of...
When word starts going around.
Yeah, there's another film in that vein called Nobody, which is starring Bob Odenkirk. It's very, very similar premise. He's a retired badass, like Hutch Mansell, I think he's called. And just one of the funny things about that film is every time people are like, who the fuck is this guy? And he says, nobody. But every time they look him up, they like just find like, redacted government records of all the wet work he did. And there's like one great scene where like the main bad guy is like, okay, who is this person? Look them up. And the person walks in, throws their laptop on the floor, says, keep the money, I'm going. Because they find out who the fuck he is and like, I'm not messing with that guy. But it happens like 3 times throughout the movie. When someone just finds out who he is, immediately quits and walks away.
I'm out, no need to pay.
As you would, right?
Yeah, you certainly would. And I was just like trying to remember like another movie of that vein that reminded me of with Michael Caine in it. And I think
Harry Brown.
Is it Harry Brown?
Yes.
Yeah.
Which I like that film because it's just Michael Caine shooting chavs.
You failed to maintain your weapon, son.
Yeah, it's just him getting pissed off with youths and just beating the shit out of them.
But I do like, though, because it's a really good version of the retired badass trope, because anyone's not familiar with the film Harry Brown, it's Michael Caine, he's like a retired special forces soldier, he's like, he's like 70 years old, he's going for a pint down the local pub, and he's stumbling home drunk one evening after like his friend is like beaten by some angry, just nondescript youths, because it's a film like it's just him shooting chavs essentially. And on his way home, someone tries to mug him with a knife, and they go to stab him with the knife, and just his instincts kick in, and he just flips the knife around and stabs him in the chest, and he doesn't realise that he did it. It's just muscle memory kicks in.
Give me your fucking money back.
And then he runs away, and then he realises nobody came to ask me about it. No one cares.
Yeah.
So he realizes, like, no one cares about my situation, but they also don't care that I went and fixed it myself. So he just goes on, like, just a mission to just end the crime spree in his neighbourhood because he realises no one gives a fuck.
And probably that no one would guess it was him,
Exactly,
right?
yeah. And just the idea, I just like, though, when he's stumbling home drunk, it's his muscle memory kicks in and he doesn't even realise it. Just like...
Yeah.
Decades of like just learning how to do that. Someone goes at me with a knife and just instinct takes over and just immediately counters it and kills them, and just like oh I guess I've still got that inside of me. And that's like what Robert McCall's like, of just like he keeps trying to retire, but every time he just sees injustice and he realizes like I could stop this very easily.
Yeah, and I imagine it would be hard to like let your instincts like not kick in after a certain point of, I say, doing that for like 30 plus years.
As well, it's like, it's very hard for those senses to be dulled. Despite no longer being an active agent, Robert maintains the traits of his former occupation, such as taking a 3-minute shower, shaving his hair, and sitting at the same place in a cafe at the same table, which is also a symptom of his OCD. Because I like the fact that they give him a little quirk, and his quirk is he's got OCD.
Right.
It reminds me a little bit of like Mother's Milk in The Boys. Joey's got like OCD, and it just that it's a little character trait that just makes them just more human, because if he didn't have something that humanized him, he would be like just this he'd be the Terminator.
I also think it's like, I don't really remember looking out for it in like the first season or whatever, but it does like really stick out how little they actually give a shit about one another in The Boys, when it's Annie that points out like, hey, like what's going on with Mother's Milk, like OCD? And he's like, what do you mean? And then she points it out to Huey, and clearly, like, Huey, Frenchie, Butcher, they never pay attention to one another.
They also probably as well never clean. Which must piss off someone with OCD, right? We'll talk about White Mother's Milk another day, but we move on now to powers and abilities. And we have a quote about Robert McCall. Whoever did this specialised in killing. I've rarely seen skills like this before. I don't think it's someone we've ever encountered. And that's one of the things they talk about, how, like, yeah, he might just... We don't know who this guy is. And like I say, he just comes from, like... He's got 50 different, like, government agencies that he worked for.
Yeah, and, like, I can't imagine there's that many people going around killing people with, like, corkscrews and credit cards.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that he does, like, anything is a weapon in his hands. And in fact, he rarely uses guns because he just doesn't fucking need to. But we have here his skills: peak human conditioning. McCall was in peak physical condition for a man of his age due to his military history and incredibly healthy diet. He stays in shape by working at a home hardware store, pushing dollies of cement. He is strong enough to drive a corkscrew clean through a man's chin and then break his neck.
Oh god, that's so brutal.
Some people get it real fucking bad. Like in the second film, that's where like Pedro Pascal is like the main bad guy. And just like he goes to his house, sits in his house in front of his wife and kids and says, my only regret is that I only get to kill you once.
You killed my friend, so I'm going to kill each and every one of you. And the only disappointment in it for me is that I only get to do it once.
And then like the final fight scene is just like Pedro Pascal on top of a lighthouse. Like, well, there's no way he's going to get me on top of a lighthouse with a sniper rifle. And Rob McCall's like, nah, man, no camping in my server. And he comes up and he gets it.
How the fuck do you get a man who's in a lighthouse with a sniper?
Training.
Show yourself!
And then we have here master martial artist. And this is one of the things that I'll give like credit to the movies of like, again, Denzel Washington is not running a fucking marathon in these things, but he did go through an incredible amount of like physical training in the similar veins like Keanu Reeves with the John Wick movies. Which makes the fight scenes, like, you know, they're a bit elevated. It's like, okay, he's 60 years old, how much ass can he really kick? But the fact that he did all the training for himself, like, you know, it adds an air, a veneer of authenticity to the fight scenes. And in regards to John Wick, I do like how I think it's the third one, where they bring in, like, the guys from the raid. Keanu Reeves himself said, in the original script, he was supposed to kill those two guys. Keanu Reeves went, there's no fucking way, like, there's no way John Wick would beat these guys. Rewrite the scene to make it so they're just happy to spar with the legendary assassin. And, like, you know, have him show them the respect of letting them live. And, like, okay, because, like, even Keanu Reeves, like, John Wick's good, but it's so obvious that these guys are, like, a level above even him. There's no way he'd be able to beat both of them at the same time in a fist fight.
Lambat dia sekarang. Harusnya dia sudah pensiun 5 tahun lalu. Tapi tetap saja, John Wick.
That's the thing, right? Is beating both of them at the same time.
Yeah, and I like that Keanu Reeves had that self-awareness of like, okay, John Wick's good. He's not that fucking good.
Like, get rid of that plot armor.
Just for a little bit. That's the thing. John Wick always gets his ass kicked, and that's the thing. Like, he has an incredible amount of durability and a high pain threshold, which he mentions is a trait shared by Robert McCall. Although he doesn't get injured as much as Keanu Reeves does. Although I don't think anyone in any movie gets as injured as Keanu Reeves does. Like, I think I remember once I made like a supercut of Keanu Reeves getting hit by cars in John Wick movies, and he gets hit by like 8 cars.
Yeah, I was shocked how many times they decide to use the he gets hit by a car.
He gets shot so much as well because they put in like the literal plot armor of like, oh, his suit's bulletproof. There was like one bit where he's walking down the street and an assassin shoots him in the back, and if he wasn't wearing his like bullshit bulletproof suit, he'd have been dead instantly. Oh, that's one of the things I like about the John Wick movies though, because they wear the bulletproof suits. When they run like covering their face with their suits because it's bulletproof. And it's so dumb, but McCall is a highly skilled martial artist, being particularly familiar with Krav Maga, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, boxing, and eskrima, as seen during his fight with Ari, and just street fighting in general. His fighting style has been described as quick and economic, because putting people down as quickly and as efficiently as possible. He effortlessly fought and killed 4 of Slavy's henchmen in under half of a minute, with the police sources having said that the killings had the earmarks of a turf war between rival factions. So he was so brutal and so efficient at putting down a room full of guys, they thought it was like a gang hit. They thought it was just a bunch of dudes walked in and fucking just bum rushed them. It's like, no, one guy walked in, announced his presence, and killed them all.
Jesus Christ.
And like I said, he's also killed a hitman who tried to ambush him at a diner. And that's good as well, because he kills the guy with a fucking book. And in that vein, Lucas, what is, the roughest you've seen, a random henchman get it in a movie? Because I think these, Equalizer movies, there's a lot of, random henchmen who get it real bad.
I mean, have you got one to mention? Because I don't watch many of these action movies. I don't watch many things starring henchmen.
In the Equalizer, there's, it happens all the time. There's, the one guy who gets, just beaten to death with a book. That's real bad. In the John Wick movies, there's another guy who gets beaten to death with a book. But then there's the pencil scene, because they talk about how John Wick killed 3 guys with a pencil, and then in the second one, I think, they show a fight scene where he gets a pencil. And it's like, okay, so how do you kill a guy with a pencil? And John Wick shoves it in his ear and then punches it down. And it's like, that's bad. But then the real bad one is he puts his hand against the wall with the pencil in it and then just rams the guy's head onto it. And it's like, oh, no!
I mean, that's the Joker tech, right? In The Dark Knight. Just how to make the pencil disappear.
I'm gonna make this pencil disappear.
Are you familiar with the Ip Man special move, which is the super fast rapid punches?
I was giggling to myself because I've gotten this clip for you multiple times for 15 clips where there's the one guy that he just doesn't stop punching.
Yeah, he punches him about 100 times in the head, and the worst bit is none of his friends help him. That's what makes it bad, is that it happens and no one jumps in to help. He just sits there why is nobody helping? That guy gets it super rough.
He does, on the floor, and he's just continuing to just get punches to the face.
And no one steps in and helps. It's super bad. And then there's what's the other one now? The Jason Bourne movie, there's that henchman that Jason Bourne beats to death with a magazine. Which I think more than anything just embarrassing, right?
Yeah.
When they got to call his family up, it's he died. Oh, was he shot or stepped on a landmine? No, Jason Bourne beaten to death with a magazine. Really? Really? We've got to tell the family that? A rolled up magazine? He's not a spider. McCall is familiar with pressure points, which is a thing are pressure points real? Let us know in the comments. Because it's one of those bullshit things that's in movies of pressure point fighting, and I've never heard any evidence that that's actually a thing. I know if you hit people in certain parts of the body, it really fucking hurts. But the idea of hitting someone with your knuckle and hitting this special nerve that instantly paralyzes them, that's bullshit, right?
Nerve strikes are said to be the ninja's secret weapon, a deceptive attack that instantly paralyzes.
Yeah, I think that's movie magic level fighting. I don't think that's if it does exist as a fighting technique, I don't think it's as good as it is portrayed in movies.
Yeah, but I do know there are certain places you can hit people that instantly puts them down. Because I mentioned the film Nobody earlier, and there's a great bit in that where Bob Odenkirk just walks in, because he's out of retirement. He's okay, the bad guy's coming to get me. He goes to his place of work, a garage, and he just dumps a bag of gold bars on the desk. And I'm buying your business. Fuck off. And the asshole son of the boss is you can't tell me what to do. And Bob Odenkirk does a tiger drop in real life. So, you know, you've got the clip, Lucas, Kiryu from Yakuza, where he just drops down to one knee and punches people as hard as he fucking can right in the solar plexus. Bob Odenkirk does that in the film for real.
Okay, sit down, breathe.
And the guy just falls like a sack of shit. And I don't know how they did that, because if you watch it, you see the guy's entire, like, midsection cave in. It's like, I think the guy might have just really taken that punch for real, and I know that if you hit someone right there in the solar plexus as hard as you fucking can when they don't expect it, that will drop you like a sack of shit.
Same with, like, you know, just if you get, like, a swift and hard enough punch to the neck and, like, basically stops you breathing properly for a while.
Yeah, which is another thing that Ip Man does a lot. Ip Man always, like, he also does, like, the karate chop to, like, the eye to, like, get you to bleed above the eyes and stuff like that. But I don't think just the thing of, like, the Star Trek of, like, nerve pinch is a real thing.
Yeah, again, like, I think there is levels of truth within these kind of techniques, but they're definitely not as good as they are on the big screen.
Yeah, he mentions here, though, that McCall is familiar with pressure points. There's a great bit in the third movie where he just grabs a guy and he has, like, his finger, like, there. So I know that that's the thing, like, arm locks and stuff like that, but he has it and says, yeah, this is, on a scale of, like, 1 to 10, this is a 2. In terms of pain. I'm going to put, that's a 3. You don't want me to go to 4, because if I go to 4, you'll shit yourself. And I'll give props to the guy's acting, because all he does when, like, Robert McCall is saying this to him is he just goes like he can't say anything because he's just in so much pain.
Me to go to 4. I go to 4, you shit on yourself. You don't want that. I don't want that. They don't want that.
And he's a really realistic acting, and, like, Joe just, he's in so much pain he can't even form words. He just blurts out just noises.
It's just gargling.
Yeah. But just the fact he says that's a 3. You don't want me to go to 4.
Like, that's the worst part. Is you don't know what scale that's on. Like, does that go to 100?
He says out of 10. But like, if that's it, if a 4 makes you shit yourself, 10's gonna, like, what? That's gotta be rough, right?
It's gonna, like, explode your body.
He mentions here, he's like Kenshiro, right?
1 0 北斗神拳は2000年の一子相伝
Says here that he can wield knives with great efficiency, although he is most deadly with improvised weapons. These includes a shot glass, a corkscrew, a hammer, a book, a fire extinguisher, a drill, a shard of glass, a teapot, a pair of glasses, a credit card, and a wine bottle.
Now that's an arsenal.
It is. And, like, one of the best beatdowns he does is against this, like, just bunch of, like, Wall Street cokeheads. And he beats the fuck out of all of them. And there's, like, the one guy who's just crying because he doesn't want to get beaten up. He just walks over and says, are you left or you right-handed? He goes, what? Slaps him. Are you left or you right-handed? He goes, I'm right-handed. He says, give me your left hand. He gives him his left hand and says, they'd, like, sexually assaulted a girl. He just grabs his hand and says, what was that girl's name again? What? What was her name? And as he says the name, he just snaps his hand in half.
Amy. That's right. For who?
For Amy.
For who?
For Amy. Ah!
He's like, and the best bit is because he's like an Uber driver and he says, you better give me 5 fucking stars. And he walks out and gets his 5 stars.
These movies sound brutal as fuck.
They really are.
You knocked on the wrong door tonight, Pops.
While you watch them, though, right? You're watching these movies to see very satisfying beatdowns of people who deserve it. It's like the John Wick movies. Like, you're watching people who've, like, pissed off John Wick, and you don't want to feel bad about him, like, blowing through, like, you know, a room of, like, 100 guys, because you know they're all assassins who played a part in killing his dog or blowing up his house. Or, like, when you're watching, like, Nobody, it's the exact same plot. A bunch of people break into his house and try and kill him. Like, you don't feel bad now because, you know, they're gangsters and they try to kill an innocent man and his family. They just didn't realise that that innocent man is a trained badass who can beat you to death with, like, you know, his bare hands.
Don't call 911.
That's why you've got to give props to like just Nobody, the fight scene in that, which is where it's on the bus, which I think they just put out in 4K to advertise the movie because they fucking knew. And it's really great because that's the bit in it where like the bad guys have a gun. Bob Odenkirk gets the gun, holds it up, and just puts all the bullets out of it. Just as like an absolute fucking flex. It's like, oh, that's so good.
I mean, you gotta love moments like that where it's just, I'm gonna disarm you, and I'm not gonna use your weapon, I'm just gonna show you I don't need it.
I'm gonna fuck you up.
But one of the best bits about that fight is because it's after, like, he gets mugged and he tracks down the mugger and you realise, like, the mugger has, like, a kid and he feels bad. So he's just really pissed off and he just wants to beat somebody up. Mm-hmm. And, like, a bunch of knobheads get onto the bus and start harassing a girl and he's like, finally. But you can see that throughout the fight scene, there's still that bit of rust. Because he's not fought in a few years, but as the fight scene goes on, you just see like the training kick in.
Yeah, I have seen that part of the movie just as like a bit that was clipped out of just him on the bus beating the shit out of those knobheads.
Yeah, because it's like the great bit you have like where you see like pull the knife out and he just pulls like a belt. What are you gonna do with the belt? And it's like you don't want to.
Run!
Thank you.
And Lucas, I could talk about this sort of stuff all day, but if people can't see on camera, it's very warm in the UK. I am very sweaty.
Mm-hmm.
Which means I get to use the line from like Step Brothers, like, why are you sweaty? I was watching Cops. I was talking about it. I got sweaty talking about Robert McCall. So we're going to call it there for today, but before we go, I'd like to say, if you do have some favourite movies in this vein, let us know in the comments or in our Discord. You can go to our Discord below and let us know your movies. Chances are I've seen them, but other people may not have, so I'm sure the people who like movies in the vein of The Equalizer or Nobody or John Wick or like the Bourne movies and the Taken movies, I'm sure they'd love to hear about them.
16 seconds.
And finally, if you'd like to offer the channel some further support, you can join our Patreon, which you can also find linked below. Leave a like, comment, feedback, all that good stuff, and as always, see you all next time. Man, it's so fucking warm in this house, mate.
Thank you, everyone.
All I can picture is just John Wick. Like, he gets sunburned, he's like, I have to fight the sun.
Oh god, no.
And he just puts on like a giant robot suit and he fights the sun.
How many puppies has the sun killed?
Yeah. So I imagine his wife died. I still think they need to do that like shit post idea for a John Wick movie if he goes all the way to hell. Like, he gets sent to hell when he dies, because obviously he's killed a bunch of people, and he fights his way out and goes to heaven to headbutt God and get his wife back. Like, give me my fucking wife back. And God's like, fuck it, just let him have it.
Oh,
I would love that if they just went randomly, just, you know what, fuck it, just put him in hell. Make it supernatural, who gives a shit?
Make him go and kill everybody he's already killed, send them to super hell.
Yeah, do it again. And then he goes to super hell and get him again. It's like, no!